Beyond Meat surprised the stock market when the company turned out to be the best IPO of 2019.
Beyond Meat.
Beyond Meat.
Beyond Meat.
I think it's ridiculous that the stock is here. I mean, I think there should be significant downside.
Alternative meat was having a moment. Alternative milk, on the other hand, has been quietly revolutionizing the dairy industry for years. Milk, the kind from cows, was once a staple of the American diet. But now, consumers have their choice between almond milk, rice milk, hemp milk, coconut milk, soy milk, you get the idea. Here's how plant-based milk is taking on the $107 billion dairy industry. Milk gained popularity after World War II. Dairy farmers had amped up milk production to supply the war effort, but when the war ended, farmers struggled to sell all the milk they produced at a favorable price. So the government stepped in. Some methods the government used to drive demand included adding dairy as its own food group to the USDA's food guidance and instilling it in school lunches across the nation. But in 2019, Americans are drinking less and less milk. In fact, milk consumption has fallen nearly 40% since 1975. Analysts say a big reason behind the shift is Americans growing more aware of milk allergies and intolerances. People are turning to plant-based milk, and people with extra cash would also rather spend the money on soy and almond than organic milk. The dairy industry isn't too happy about the changes.
The dairy industry is challenged really at all levels. You look at the farm level with milk prices having been low for the past few years. Profitability for dairy farmers has been very weak. You're seeing a lot of financial pain at the farmer level, coming through to the processor level where Dean Foods is. That's more of a reflection of these multi-decade declines in fluid milk consumption that don't really seem to be abating.
In response, the dairy industry attacked the plant-based alternatives for branding their items as milk. Plant-based milk companies use the term because it's easier for consumers to understand. The dairy industry thinks it's misleading, which is why you see coconut beverage on some containers instead of coconut milk. And in 2017, Senator Tammy Baldwin proposed the Dairy Pride Act. It would require enforcement against misbranded milk alternatives. In 2018, the FDA addressed the dairy industry's concerns. They called the labeling misleading and said that it could compromise the health and well-being of consumers. However, no standard has been put in place. And despite backlash from the industry, dairy-related companies are seeing the popularity in nut-based drinks as a business opportunity. In 2017, Danone acquired White Wave, the company behind Horizon Milk and Silk Pure Almond, for $12.5 billion. Since the purchase, Danone stock has gone up more than 30%. Analysts say the dairy industry has failed to innovate, and as a result, sales of milk have dropped by $4 billion since 2015. But tech innovations have improved, and more plant-based products have appeared on the market, and they look pretty similar to milk too. Meet Michelle Simon, the executive director of the Plant-Based Food Association, whose members include Beyond Meat and Blue Diamond growers. She explains that plant-based beverages like soy have been around for a long time, and it was the marketing of soy milk that opened the door for plant-based drinks.
What really brought soy milk into the mainstream market was when it shifted away from that type of merchandising to being sold in the refrigerated section right next to cow's milk. So they changed the packaging. It went from those shelf-stable packages to the familiar gable-top milk style packages and sold it right where cow's milk is sold.
And it worked. Today, almond milk dominates 68% of the plant-based industry, with soy milk leading in second at 13.8%. Former milk producer Elmhurst Milk 1925 shifted from cow's milk to nut-based beverages in 2017 after signs of the declining industry. The change came when CEO Henry Schwartz met food scientist Cheryl Mitchell, who was perfecting a way to use the whole part of the nut for nut-based beverages. Here's Cheryl Mitchell explaining Elmhurst's hydro-release process.
When we do the hydro-release method, it's kind of like power washing. Instead of grinding to a flour, everything comes off in layers, right? And it's actually a very gentle process. And big particles, right? Well, that's what you want to do with a fiber, is that you want to make sure that the fibers stay very long. It makes them easy to separate from the protein. And that's what the hydro release process. So I was able to figure out the right equipment to make sure all of this happens.
Oh, and by the way, Cheryl thinks it shouldn't be called plant-based milk. Elmhurst 1925 calls it milked because they're literally lactating the milk. According to IBIS World, a market research organization, the plant-based beverage industry could be worth $2.4 billion by 2024. But it's facing challenges. Some companies often have trouble keeping up with demand. And to see where the old-school dairy industry is going, some analysts say to look at the coffee industry. A 2016 Wells Fargo report draws parallels between the milk and coffee industries. From 1946 to 1996, coffee consumption declined by 56%, but since 1997, it's rebounded by 14%. The coffee industry had become complacent with producing instant coffee and had continued to market to adults instead of a larger market. Coffee intake was also down due to speculative links between caffeine and cancer, high cholesterol, and other health diseases. Sound familiar? The dairy industry has the same problems. The game changer for coffee was focusing on premium and specialty coffee.
So we think what the milk category is really missing is, what coffee leaned on, 30 years ago. It's quality, it's marketing, it's investment, it's branding, and we've seen that with Fairway, from Coke. And I think that is a little case study that shows that if you do have an emphasis on quality, emphasis on taste, marketing dollars put behind it, you can actually drive growth in the category and even at higher price points.
While plant-based milk may be the newest threat to cow's milk, it wasn't the first. The dairy industry also dealt with the rise of soda and bottled water. So as plant-based meats take on Wall Street and hit store shelves, remember, it was plant-based milk that flooded the market first.